Okay, so I want to look at where does the quadratic formula come from? So it's actually something we could derive. Essentially, it comes from solving this equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, by completing the square. So we learned how to complete the square in the previous section, and so we're just going to do that here. It's a little tricky because, you know, the a, so many letters, a, b, c, and x, but we're solving this for x. So to complete the square here, I first divide everything by a, and to divide out that coefficient of x squared. So then we get x squared plus, this is a b over a times x. I'm going to move the c over a to the other side by subtracting it. So I'll get a negative c over a on the right side, because 0 divided by a is still 0. And then because I'm completing the square, I'll set up my blanks here. So this is my rewrite step. And right after I do that, I set up my goal a few steps below it. That has an equal sign in the middle with something over here being squared and an x in it. So what goes in there? Well, we have to take half times the coefficient of the x term, but that's 1/2 times b over a. So that's b over 2a. Goes in downstairs, and then to figure out what goes back in upstairs, well, I take this b over 2a and I multiply it by itself. So b over 2a times b over 2a, that's a b squared over 4a squared. So I add that to both sides of this equation. And let's see if I can maybe squeeze that in over here. It's b over 2a times, I put that a little close because I was trying to fit the goal and the stuff that's going to come behind it on the same page here. So b over 2a times b over 2a is going upstairs, and that's b squared over 4a squared. Now, I have these fractions, and I'd like to, on the right-hand side of this equation, so the left-hand side is done, it's my completed square. On the right, I'd like to get these to have a common denominator, which would be 4a squared. So I have to multiply this first fraction by 4a over 4a. And then both those fractions have a denominator of 4a squared. So I put that in down here. In the numerator, I have a negative c times 4a, or a negative 4ac, plus a b squared. So I'm just going to put those in the reverse order. B squared minus 4ac. And we start seeing sort of the pieces of the quadratic formula here. So now once I have my completed square, I now want to solve this using square roots. So to do that, we take the square root of both sides. Square root of the left, square root of the right. I'll put an equal sign in the middle. So on the left, we have the square root of something squared, so that's going to be the absolute value of that thing. On the right, we also have the square root of something squared. That's downstairs here. That 4a squared in the basement. When I square root that, I'd like to get 2a, but I actually am going to get the absolute value of 2a. And then I'll fill in the other pieces here. Oops. Look, I'm sure there's a way for me to toggle between pens easier than I'm doing, but it's okay. I don't know how to do it right now. So I'm going to get absolute value of x plus 2a, b over 2a on the left, and an absolute value of 2a on the bottom, and then I don't know how to reduce this guy because I'm adding those terms. So that guy doesn't reduce, that stays inside the square root. And now I'm going to remove these absolute values. And what happens on the left, when I remove this one on the left, I get x plus b over 2a equals, on the right here, I get a plus or minus from this thing on the left, but I guess I get a plus or minus from the thing downstairs. But when you have a plus or minus and you multiply it by a plus or minus, you just end up with a single plus or minus. And it's plus or minus what? The square root of b squared minus 4ac. So now I'm going to remove this absolute value down here as well. And those plus and minuses just go together and become a single plus or minus. And you can see here, there's our quadratic formula. When I subtract the b over 2a from both sides, I get negative b over 2a, but I'll put the whole thing over 2a. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There's my quadratic formula. How did I get it? I derived it by completing the square from this original equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So, I didn't really use anything that we don't know how to do. You could all do this. Hopefully you copied it down and you can see it. I know that it's a little confusing because of all the letters, but this quadratic formula is not magic. We are able to take this original equation and use the methods of completing the square, which is only like how many steps? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So only have 5 or 6 steps to get to here, to get this quadratic formula, and then with it we can solve all of our quadratic or our highest power of x equal 2 equations. All right.